Welcome everyone to National PTA's Learning Lab, a sponsored educational series on a variety of topics important to PTA leaders, members, and parents. All Learning Labs are sponsored sessions, and National PTA does not endorse any commercial entity, product, or service. No endorsement of sponsor companies is implied. Today we'll learn from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is the leading advocacy organization working to reduce tobacco use and its deadly consequences in the United States and around the world. Through strategic communications and policy advocacy campaigns, they promote the adoption of proven solutions that are most effective at reducing tobacco use and save the most lives. For more than 20 years, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids has fought to protect children and save lives from the #1 cause of preventable death, tobacco use. Their vision is a future free of the death and disease caused by tobacco. Today, we'll be joined by Portia Reddick-White, JD. As Vice President for Strategic Partnerships at the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, Portia Reddick-White leads the new Department of Strategic Partnerships, TFK's program to build, cultivate, and sustain relationships with a broad range of organizations, including with the health community, organizations concerned about youth advocacy, and with communities disproportionately or otherwise impacted by tobacco use. CTFK's new department reflects a commitment to expand the role and capability of their partnership work and their vision for engaging a wider range of partners. As a leader in strategy, outreach, and political engagement, Portia has led efforts previously with the National Education Association, Majority Leader Harry Reid, Transport Workers Union of America, the 2016 Democratic National Convention, and AARP, including roles as speaker, writer, organizer, lobbyist, and activist. Thank you, Portia, for joining us today. During the presentation, please feel free to put your questions into the Q&A down below, and we'll answer them after the presentation concludes. Now I'll turn it over to the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids to continue their presentation.
Well, thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much for inviting us to join you today. And I am Portia Reddick-White, and joining with me as well from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is Caroline Goncalves-Jones. She's our Director of Advocacy and Outreach, and she'll be presenting to you as well. So before we go too far into a presentation, we know it's a strange time. We know that there's a lot going on, but we thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and to join in a conversation about talking to kids about vaping and what you need to know to protect your kids. I'm going to share a poll and would hope that you would respond to that poll at this time, so that we can figure out exactly who is on board, so you can tell us about who you are. So I hope that the poll is showing right now. Everyone else see that? Okay, great. So if you could answer those questions, that would be wonderful. I'll give you a few moments. So nobody's voting, just kind of want to know who you are. If you're a parent of a elementary schooler, a middle schooler, a high schooler, that would be good to know. How familiar you are with e-cigarettes and youth tobacco, and what you're looking to learn in this presentation today, and how your family has struggled with youth e-cigarette use or not. So we hope that within our presentation, we're able to focus on some of the questions that you have. So again, as Caroline has indicated, please feel free throughout the presentation to put in your questions in the Q&A, and we'll go from there in answering that. We might kind of hold them until the end of the session to answer, but as you think of them, it would be great for you to go ahead and place there. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I think pretty much everybody has voted, right? Let me see. On the first question, yeah, I think. Second question, yes. Third question, yes. And the final question, yes. So we're going to end our polling. And we're going to share results. You guys want to see who's on board today? So looks like we have, it's kind of evenly split. with who's on board, the elementary schooler, the middle schooler, or the high schooler parent, and how familiar people are with tobacco use. Looks like people have heard about it, and some are very familiar with this issue. Nobody's unfamiliar with it. That's good. And as far as what people are looking forward to most learning about the presentation today, looks like for the majority, and it's very slim, what's driving the youth epidemic, as well as how you can get involved in reversing this youth epidemic, and then how to talk about children, how to talk to children about e-cigarettes. And it looks fortunately that the majority have not had to struggle with youth e-cigarette use. Looks like we do have a struggle as well that has happened. So it would be interesting to hear how we can assist with that. So I am going to stop sharing that at this moment and hand it over to Caroline Goncalves Jones to launch our presentation and our webinar in discussing today the topic of e-cigarettes, talking to kids about vaping and what you need to know. Caroline?
Thanks so much, Portia, and thank you all for joining us today. You know, we know everyone has a busy schedule and a lot going on, but we do think this is such an important topic, and we value the time that you're giving to us today to learn about it. So today, I think the poll is actually really well suited. It seems like we're going to address a lot of the questions that you all may have. Which is specifically about youth tobacco use and vaping. And we wanted to touch on not only the problem today, but what's driving it, and the solutions that we at Tobacco Free Kids are seeking to reverse the youth e-cigarette epidemic and, youth tobacco use as a whole. So as well, we also want to touch a little bit on to the impacts of COVID-19 and to youth tobacco use, because unfortunately there is a link there as well. And as kids are returning to school, we especially want parents and teachers to be aware of kind of the problems that may arise there as well. So as folks I'm sure are familiar, over the past really 2 to 3 years, we've seen a youth e-cigarette epidemic. And in 2018 is when we saw the rise of e-cigarettes, largely attributed to Juul, which I'm sure most folks are familiar with. And that is when the FDA commissioner at the time said, we're in the midst of an epidemic. And we saw over the past couple of years, headlines in papers that schools are struggling, parents are struggling, and kids are just using these products at enormous rates. And what we saw specifically in 2019 was a surge of youth e-cigarette use, 1 in 4 students, high school students using the products. We recently got some new data for 2020, data that was taken in March, so just before kids left school because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But unfortunately, what we still see, while we saw a reduction in high school youth e-cigarette use, we still see it at the levels of when this was first called an epidemic in 2018. So that's the most important thing to note, that we are still in the midst of this public health crisis. We are at, from 2019 to 2020, 27.5% to 19.6% of high school students are still using e-cigarettes. That's 1 in 5 high school students, which is unacceptable numbers in our vision. We had been making such progress in reducing youth tobacco use. To cede it all to youth e-cigarette use is something that we are incredibly concerned about. 3.6 million middle and high school students are using e-cigarettes, and we are still at epidemic levels. The CDC director said in September of 2020, youth e-cigarette use remains an epidemic, and the current FDA commissioner also said, youth use of e-cigarettes remains a public health crisis that is affecting children, families, schools, and communities. And there's also growing concerns about the youth addiction of e-cigarette use. More kids who use e-cigarettes are becoming addicted, and you can just see this steady incline of youth addiction. 38.9% of high school e-cigarette users are vaping on at least 20 days a month. which is a strong sign of addiction. The percentage of high school e-cigarette users reporting such frequent use has steadily increased. It was 15.5% in 2014 and 27.2% in 2018. Over 730,000 middle and high school students are vaping every day, which is incredibly concerning. So, as I said, we're addicting a new generation of youth, and that we are now allowing this new generation who we had really taught so well the impacts and dangers of tobacco use. They are now becoming addicted to nicotine. As I said, over 730,000 daily users, which is strong signs of addiction. And, data from the 2019 Monitoring the Future survey found that 1 out of 9 high school seniors report they vape nicotine daily. That means nearly half of high school seniors who vape nicotine are doing it every day, and 1/3 of 10th graders who vape nicotine are doing it nearly every day. And so why is this a problem? That's a big question that we get isn't this better than them smoking cigarettes? For youth, no. There is great impacts on youth health, especially nicotine addiction. According to the Surgeon General, youth use of products containing nicotine in any form, including e-cigarettes, is unsafe and can cause addiction and can harm the developing adolescent brain. Nicotine is highly addictive. It can harm brain development. It can prime the brain for addiction to other drugs. And those who use e-cigarettes are more likely to use combustible cigarettes, which we all know the concerns about. And this is high levels of nicotine too, some things that we've never seen before. One small Juul pod, which I'm sure any parent on here, you all said you're familiar with e-cigarettes in the poll. One of those small pods has the same amount of nicotine as an entire pack of cigarettes. And kids are running through these small pods in a day. So they are making themselves susceptible to levels of nicotine we have never seen before, and addiction that we have never seen before. We hear anecdotally of kids sleeping with their e-cigarette under their pillow and getting a puff during the night, or, of course, using it in the bathrooms at school, using it in the classrooms at school. So it's levels that we never have seen before. And it's not like a cigarette where, if you're sitting next to me, I know you're smoking that cigarette. It's really not as apparent with some e-cigarette products, given the little amount of vapor that they emit, the little amount of smell that they emit, and how they're concealable and easy to hide from parents and teachers and everyone. So, again, going to a lot of the health effects, the health authorities are warning that e-cigarettes are not harmless. The Surgeon General and the National Academy of Sciences have both really cautioned about youth use, and youth use is under 26, youth use of e-cigarettes and the impacts that it can have on youth health. And as I said, we're putting young lungs at risk, especially at a time when we shouldn't be doing that, when there's so many concerns about other potential, diseases out there like COVID-19. Not only is there the nicotine addiction, but youth e-cigarette users inhale harmful substances, including toxic chemicals and metals like nickel and lead too. So that brings us to COVID-19, and what do we know about the connections between youth tobacco use and COVID-19? The CDC has said that being a current or former cigarette smoker increases your risk of severe illness from COVID-19, and smokers might be at an increased risk factor. So, what do we know? The coronavirus attacks your lungs, right? Smoking and vaping are things that specifically impact your lungs. There's conclusive evidence that smoking increases the risk for respiratory infections, weakens the immune system, and is a major cause of a number of chronic health conditions. And there's also a growing body of evidence that vaping can harm lung health, especially young lung health. And leading health experts have been kind of raising the alarms about this as well, especially Nora Volkolo, the director of US NIDA, has said that, COVID-19 could be an especially serious threat to those who smoke tobacco or marijuana or vape. And that, the CDC, as I said, has cautioned and said that now is the time to quit if you can. And then if we look to, you know, as schools are reopening, we need to remember, you know, kids have been out of school for so long. We do think they've still been using e-cigarettes, but as they get back to school, there's all these other concerns that come about. You know, we've heard of kids sharing these products, you know, and that's extremely concerning, as if you know, one kid is using the product and then handing it to another, just passing the virus around. It's extremely concerning, and the return to school should not mean we return to this place of the youth e-cigarette epidemic, where we really saw youth e-cigarette use explode, was in schools. So we want parents and teachers to continue to be aware of the perils of youth e-cigarette use, and now more than ever encourage students to quit. You know, especially if kids are using e-cigarettes, they're not wearing their masks. They're not doing the things that they should be doing. They're not probably practicing the types of behaviors that we want them to. So there's really no better time to quit than now to protect our kids' health. Tobacco-free kids, we do have, if you want more information on the links between COVID-19 and tobacco use, we have some great resources on our website. You know, this website down here, if you go to our homepage, tobaccofreekids.org, it's right on there. But we have some great things specifically about, you know, the types of resources there are to quit, which could be incredibly helpful for parents and teachers on this webinar of the different things that are out there. We also have a lot of resources for parents, specifically how to talk to your kids, what parents need to know about the youth vaping epidemic in relation to COVID-19, and also hearing from kids in their own words about how they've struggled with youth e-cigarette use. And we've found that to be really helpful for parents to see is the struggles that kids have and how they're talking about them. You know, nicotine addiction is an incredibly hard thing to kick. And once kids are addicted, I think they also get a little bit lost in what do I do? Because there's not a ton of resources out there, and there's a lot of peer pressure too. So hearing from kids specifically who are youth e-cigarette users has been helpful for parents to kind of understand what their kids might be going through. You know, these are kind of some of the samples that we have on our website too of how to talk to your kids and some of the conversations that can be out there. So now getting to what is driving this problem, which I know it seemed like a number of you are concerned about and wanted to hear about. And what we know is driving the youth e-cigarette epidemic and youth tobacco use as a whole is flavors. Flavors are why kids use these products, and they're why they continue to use these products. And as these products continue to be flavors, they will continue to attract kids to use them. You know, there currently are no flavored cigarettes on the market except for menthol cigarettes. That's the only flavored cigarette that is currently allowed to be on the market. But there's over 15,000 e-cigarette flavors in flavors such as cotton candy, grape, watermelon, you know, unicorn, unicorn poop, these awful flavors. There's a ton of things that are out there. But what we know is they're attractive to kids, right? These are flavors that are, you know, Fruity Pebbles. Those are things that kids are going to want to try. They're not geared towards adults. So that is a huge part of the problem of the epidemic is these are specifically targeted towards our kids. You know, there's also other flavored products that are out there. I'm sure some of you are familiar with flavored cigars, which come in grape and cherry and banana smash. And they're small, easy to get. They're at the convenience store, 2 for 99 cents. And they're, again, things that are attracting our kids to use them. And then, as I mentioned, menthol cigarettes are the only flavored cigarette on the market, and they are a starter product for youth. More than 50% of kids that are smokers smoke menthols, and that's because they're easier to use. It goes down easier, it breathes easier, it cools the throat as it goes down, and it's a starter product for kids to get on to using other cigarettes and other tobacco products. And the tobacco industry knows exactly what they're doing with flavors. They've been doing this for decades. They know that flavors attract kids, and they need to recruit kids to use these products so that they can continue to be in business. And 81% of youth who have ever used a tobacco product started with a flavored product. So we know this is the reason kids are picking up these products and starting their journey of youth nicotine addiction. 72% of current youth tobacco users used a flavored product in the past month. And as I said, why wouldn't they, with flavors like popcorn, choco donuts, cotton candy, lemonade, all of those things that are out there. 7 out of 10 current youth e-cigarette users said they use them because they come in flavors I like. And that's only a trend that we've seen continue. This is from September 2020, so just a couple months ago, that we saw that most kids use flavored e-cigarettes. Among current youth e-cigarette users in 2020, 82.9% used flavored e-cigarettes. The most popular flavors were fruit, mint, menthol, and candy, and other desserts and sweets. Again, flavors that are specifically targeted towards our kids. And you know, these are just some testimonials that we've heard from kids, that flavors are why kids are using these products. You know, it's easy, it's like gum. And what is the reason that kids started picking up Juul? It's because it came in mango and fruit medley and those different types of flavors. And then menthol e-cigarettes are a huge problem as well. And that's something that the tobacco industry would like to tell you are products that are geared towards adult users, which is just not true. We've seen a surge in menthol e-cigarette use. 37% of all high school e-cigarette users use menthol products. And that's because it's the only flavored product left by Juul. So Juul can only have one. It has its tobacco flavor and it has menthol flavors. And so as we've seen Juul pull other flavors off the market, we've seen menthol skyrocket, because kids will go to whatever flavor is left on the market. And if menthol is there, kids will go to use it. You can kind of see that surge in May 2020 right there, when menthol really drove up, when all other flavors were removed from the market. And one thing that we do want parents to be aware about, especially, is disposable e-cigarettes, which are a growing threat to our kids. And we've seen a surge in use of them. Very similar to Juul, sleek and small, easy to get, $5. Some have even higher nicotine content than Juul. And we've seen kids dramatically shift to these products. And instead of having that product under your bed, this is one where you just throw away when you're done with it. So it's really hard to even see the remnants of kids using it. You know, from 2019 to 2020, we saw a 1,000% increase among high school e-cigarette users, and a 400% increase among middle school e-cigarette users with disposables. So we've seen, especially in the past year, kids just migrating to these products, again, which are flavored, which have the flavors they want, and that are easily to conceal, easy to use, and have high nicotine content. And then, you know, these are the other products that are easy to hide, easy to use, Smoke and Soarin', which you can kind of put all those 15,000 flavors in them. So it's all these products are out there for our kids, and that they're using them in high amounts. The Smoke and Soarin' are the most popular e-cigarette devices after Juul. And, you know, and unfortunately, we have a lot of the products out there that are easily concealable, as I kind of said. You know, we have ones that look like lipstick, ones that look like highlighters, ones that look like phones, ones that are disguised in your hoodie. I think, as you're all familiar with kind of how a Juul looks like a flash drive. But these are things that are specifically, again, this industry is trying to make it easy for our kids to use these products in a way that is hiding from parents and teachers. So we need parents and teachers to be as vigilant as possible, as well, in trying to keep these products out of our kids' hands. And then to kind of just also, we wanted to talk about the other tobacco products that kids are using and the other flavored products that kids are using. I mentioned some of the flavored cigars that are out there. And as I said, 2 for 99 cents, really easy for kids to get, especially price conscious kids. And they come in flavors like watermelon and lemonade. Again, attractive to kids. And cigar companies know exactly what they're doing. They're specifically marketing to kids with influencers, with the cheap products, and making sure they're on the platforms that kids are on: TikTok, Instagram, all these different places. And, you know, unsurprisingly, because of this, cigars surpass cigarettes in popularity. Overall, more kids use cigars than use cigarettes. And African-American youth have the highest rates of cigar use. So it's also a health disparity issue there that we want to address. And that's because, again, they are targeted towards the communities that they think will use them most. And then again, to talk about the one flavored cigarette that's out there, menthol cigarettes. And menthol cigarette use is highest among African-American and youth smokers. As I said, more than 50% of kids that are youth smokers are smoking menthol cigarettes, and 85% of African-American smokers use menthol smokers, compared to 29% of white smokers. So there is absolutely also this health disparity issue that we are trying to drive at by removing these products. And this is due, you know, the high rates of African-American menthol cigarette use is due to the tobacco industry targeting this community relentlessly for decades, through point of sale marketing, through sponsorships, through, you know, price discounting in African-American neighborhoods. It's really a disgusting thing that's been done over decades to have a community be so susceptible to this type of marketing and targeting. And this is just, you know, some of the more of the marketing that they've done towards the community. So where does this leave us? And this is kind of the next steps that we wanted to share of what are we looking to do? And that's, we need to prohibit the sale of all flavored tobacco products, flavored e-cigarettes, menthol cigarettes, and flavored cigars. And that's what we at the Tobacco Free Kids are working to do. So the FDA could do these actions. Congress could work to do these actions, and states and localities can do these actions. So we are looking at all levels of government to get these products out of the hands of our kids. You all may remember last year or over a year ago, the Trump administration did announce that they plan to take flavored e-cigarettes off the market. Unfortunately, what they wound up doing is doing a much more scaled back version of that plan, where they took off pod-based products similar to what's in a Juul, but left, as I mentioned, menthol on the market. And that's really all that policy did. So there's a lot left on the market that we need to pull off that kids are using. And so what did that action leave on the market? All these different types of things that we talked about that kids are using. The disposables, the menthols, the 15,000 flavors, and the refillable devices. So what does that mean? If the administration won't act, then we believe that Congress should act and states and cities should act as well to prohibit these products. We did pass a bill out of the House of Representatives last year, which would prohibit all flavored tobacco products, HR 2339. That's legislation that we will again pursue next year. Would love to have, you know, different PTA supports for that in the future. They didn't happen in the Senate, but we're hopeful that maybe next year we can move a full bill across the finish line. And states and localities can act too. So over 25% of the population now live in a city or state that has enacted restrictions on the sale of flavored e-cigarettes and other tobacco products. In November of last year, Massachusetts became the first state to prohibit all flavored tobacco products. And then we've seen other states act as well this past year in 2020. Both New York and New Jersey passed laws that would prohibit flavored e-cigarettes. And just this past August, California passed a law that would prohibit flavored e-cigarettes, menthol cigarettes, and flavored cigars. Huge steps forward. Unfortunately, the industry is challenging that California law, but we'll continue to fight it as hard as we can. So also now, how can you get involved? We have an initiative called Protect Kids, Fight Flavored E-Cigarettes, which we are hoping that you know, folks across the country engage with and come on board with, because as we said, you know, removing flavored e-cigarettes from the market is how we get these products out of kids' hands and how we reverse the youth e-cigarette epidemic. We have campaigns across the country. Those campaigns in California, New Jersey, New York are all campaigns that we ran to try to prohibit these products. We'll have a number more in the new year that we would love folks to engage with. Just reach out to do that. And then we also have a communications piece of the campaign, which is teaching and educating about the dangers of e-cigarettes. And this is just some of the types of work that we do in the communications piece that we do.
You can't stop using an e-cigarette just like that.
E-cigarettes were like nothing I've ever seen before. They were colored, they were flavored. The fruity flavors, the mints, the candy, gummy bear, I 100% believe they were targeted towards teens. If you do find your child using e-cigarettes, try to be understanding and help them to quit.
So the Protect Kids website has a number of these types of resources that you all could share and use in educating and engaging with our campaigns too. Just get to the next slide. Oh, the slide might have froze just the video. There we go. Sorry about that. And then how you can join our campaigns is going to fightflavoredecigs.org. We have a National Day of Action, which PTAs could engage in at takedowntobacco.org. And we would also, encourage you as well. One of the best ways to get involved is to start to have these conversations with your kids. But we would love for folks to get involved with us in our campaigns, especially if you found an interest in kind of the work that we're doing to prohibit products. So with that, I definitely wanted to leave some time for questions. It looks like we have some in the chat, but would definitely welcome hearing your feedback and anything that additional resources we might be able to provide you all to get engaged and take the next step with us and in reversing the youth e-cigarette epidemic.
Thanks, Caroline. I think we had two questions that were answered within the chat. One was about the training program. Do we have a training program, CTFK, that specifically targets and assists youth on their training? And can you talk a bit more about maybe the training program that CTFK has regarding youth?
Yeah, we have a wonderful training program. We have a wonderful youth advocacy department that gets youth involved who want to kind of participate in this work. And there's really some amazing youth advocates out there that want to speak, have seen the impacts of youth tobacco use and want to speak out against it, have seen the targeting of the tobacco industry on youth and how they've seen, our youth as really just replacement smokers and how they get engaged. So what we do at Tobacco Free Kids is we have Take Down Tobacco, which is a training program, an advocacy training program that kids can go through and take it step by step. But then if you want to take that advocacy even further, we have a program that we actually bring in and engage youth advocates in high schools to train them to go out in their communities and be advocates, meeting with legislators, speaking up at hearings, doing all those types of things and learning how to be the most effective advocates in their communities. And not only for themselves, but teaching their peers, teaching their parents really often about the dangers of these products and how they can be, how we can best reverse the youth epidemic of tobacco use. So that's at takedowntobacco.org, and we'd welcome you to get engaged there. And if you have any specific questions on how maybe your teen could engage with our program, please email us at partnerships@tfk.org, and we can get you in contact with our youth program. And there's also a ton of youth advocacy groups in the States as well that we're connected to. So there's possibilities that we could link you up with the localities and youth groups that are happening in your hometown.
So there are additional questions I think that you would be helpful in answering as well, Caroline. One question is, as a parent, who is the best person in the school setting to contact to find out if the school is providing training for staff and students? I know we actually work with the nurses, we work with counselors, but do you have a specific answer for that one? A specific answer?
So we work with the National Association for Secondary School Principals, Elementary School Principals, the National Association of School Nurses. So all of those folks in your community should be equipped to answer some of these questions. I would say the principal would know best about the different types of programs that your individual school is running. You know, we've definitely heard that most schools have had to hopefully have put in some type of precautions about teaching about the dangers of youth e-cigarette use, as well as, you know, different types of what is going to happen if kids are found using these products. We don't favor, you know, suspensions or any type of, you know, that type of work, because, you know, nicotine addiction is a hard thing to kick. So we would recommend, you know, different types of educational and training, and giving the kids resources how to quit, listening to kids how to do these types of things. But I think the best person to start with is likely your principal. And if they have questions on kind of what programs they could institute in their schools, if there isn't something already, that is something that we can help with and point to the right resources of there's a lot of things out there that different schools are putting on. And the different groups have. The Lung Association has one program of different types of training programs to learn how to have the different types of, you know, not only the health impacts, but as well resources to quit, which is one thing that we think is so important to get out there to kids is what is there to help you to quit, because we want to give kids the support to do that and know that they're in a safe place to kind of ask about it, because we don't want them to struggle alone with these types of questions.
And you actually somewhat answered the second half of the question, which is, are you aware of schools that are supporting youth with nicotine addiction issues and what they are doing with this issue? And I will just add on that, yes, we are aware of some schools that are very supportive. They do have restorative practices that they've actually put in place. The principals are very much aware of what's going on when in the school setting, when kids are going to the restroom and smoking in the restroom together. It's usually done with a group, of course, more than one. But so they're aware of all these things, and counselors are very supportive. There are other groups such as like FCCLA and others that are supporting the program actually that we are putting forth and helping to train students to be aware of the signs of addiction and how to, you know, go to the quit line, text to quit, so that they can get the help that they need for the nicotine addiction. Would you add anything else additionally, Caroline?
No, I think that's a great answer, Portia. And it's we are very focused on the advocacy work and getting these products out of kids' hands, but we are also focused on making sure that kids have the resources to quit. And we compile, you know, as much as we can out there. There's a ton out there for adults, right? There's a ton out there of how adults can quit. There's not as much out there of teaching kids how to quit. What is the best way to connect with them and communicate with them? Portia mentioned a great resource, which is the Truth Initiative's This Is Quitting text line, which is one that I would absolutely advocate you take a look at, especially if you know someone who is struggling with youth e-cigarette use. And those are looking at different types of ways to talk to kids in their own settings. You know, they may be more comfortable texting than talking with someone on the phone. So that is kind of the things that we're looking at of how do we get this message to kids in a way that is going to be helpful and effective for them to use. I see another question. What is the
and
best?
I think another question.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. I think education.
Nope, that's fine. You're right. What age?
Yeah.
I was going to say that I have a.
Go ahead, Portia.
Go ahead, Caroline. You go ahead, Caroline.
So I should say that there's unfortunately data that we've seen as young as 5th graders using e-cigarettes, you know, and that is extremely concerning, because getting on a route to youth nicotine addiction at that young of an age is incredibly hard to come back from. So, you know, we have been advocating at the elementary school level that is when education should start, for sure. just about the dangers of the health impacts, that this is not just water vapor. That's often what we hear from a lot of kids, that this is not impactful. It's better than having cigarettes. What we know about nicotine addiction is it's so harmful in the long run, and that it is so hard to kick, and that it could lead to more harmful substances that they could use too. So I think the earlier the better, unfortunately. We hear a lot about kids using these, being exposed to these for the first time on the school bus, when there's less monitoring of from parents and teachers. So just making your kids aware about these and having those conversations early is extremely important, we think. And that doesn't mean you need to go down the whole road of how you'll ruin your life with them, but just to them to know that it's not just water vapor, that there are a lot of impacts to this. And that if they're, pressured to try them, they should let you know and have an open conversation about that.
I was just going to say that as well. Peer pressure is a big deal here. And as you know, as far as peer pressure, once you're in that, 11, 12, 13 age group, you really are at the mercy of peers who are pushing ideals. You're also inquisitive, so you do things because you just want to try them. And the problem is, and we said it earlier within the slide presentation, is that yes, flavors bring you, but the nicotine keeps you there, and it makes them addicted. So the earlier, the better. I have a 12-year-old who is very much aware, and was very much aware, regardless of what I would say, as to what an e-cigarette was, and has been educated because of her peers on it. So we start early, and and you can make sure that you're doing that as well. So another question that just appeared, by the way, these are great questions, so thank you for that. The question is, I have heard that the e-cig products are dangerous to young children if swallowed. Can you talk more about this, Caroline?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, they're chemicals. We saw a huge surge in calls to poison control centers in 2019 because kids were unfortunately, likely getting their parents thing. And when you see something identified as cotton candy liquid, a kid might want to try that, even a younger kid. So one thing that did happen, I believe in 2019, was they strengthened the laws on the type of cap to use that e-cigarettes have to use, but it's not enough. These are harmful substances that kids could be ingesting, and we've seen that through calls to poison control centers. But it's absolutely concerning. And if your kid ingests this type of product, please make that your first call to the poison control center. That we don't know, unfortunately, because the FDA has not been as rigorous as we have asked them to be about letting these products on the market. They have not disclosed everything that's in them. So we do not know all the chemicals that they've used that are parts of them, everything, all the different pieces of them. Everything's different. As I said, there's over 15,000 different types of them. So it's impossible to know every single ingredient, because ingredient listings are not required in what your kid might be ingesting. So a huge concern, and something that is, we have strongly urged the FDA to be more rigorous about in disclosing that information and having e-cigarette manufacturers disclose that information.
So another comment or question, combination. Thank you for this informative webinar. Many youth are also swayed by the environmental damage caused by vapes, littered pods, batteries. Single-use disposable vapes can be used to make them uncool. And yes, this environmental piece is really growing with the use of vapes and the litter that they have brought to society, right? And so that is another reason to not use them, really. But we do, and we're very much aware of that. And then there was a question, are there signs for parents to look for youth that are vaping? Do we have an answer for that, Caroline?
Yeah, it's tough because they make it, as I talked about a little bit in the presentation, they make it hard, especially with how these products look, to hide. They're specifically made to conceal from parents and teachers. One thing that we've heard from anecdotally from other parents is an open window, especially in the middle of the winter, that it's, if kids are sneaking away, if kids are wearing their hood. I think often it sounds like kids will do it in their hood or like blow it into their shirt. So those are types of things. Unfortunately, with some of these products, there's not a strong smell specifically, so that they can't be detected. But in other ones, you can tell. In those big devices, you can see kind of the clouds and stuff. But most kids are going to try to be hiding these products, so it's tough. Nicotine can affect moods. So that is one thing to be aware of. If your teen or youth seems to be off and maybe more irritable, that is one thing that is potentially a sign, because nicotine can affect a youth's mood and behavior, especially if maybe they haven't gotten their nicotine fix in a specific amount of time. So I would say attitude, as well as just kind of the actions that they're taking. If it seems a little off, if they're sneaking away, if they're putting their head in their shirt, they could be doing it at the dinner table with you, and you could be unaware. I've unfortunately heard that anecdotally of a parent after the fact that realized every time her son was going like this, he was taking a puff of his Juul at the dinner table. So it's unfortunately, we have to be incredibly vigilant, and really we think that the discussions with youth ahead of time about talking about it and making them know that they shouldn't be ashamed of it, that is something they can talk to you about, is really important, because we think the shaming part of this is a lot of the reason why kids are concerned, and they've gotten so far. They started using the product because it was flavored or because of peer pressure, got addicted really quick, and then get lost. What am I supposed to do next? And we want them to know that next step doesn't have to be alone. That's one of the most important things I could say.
Yeah, and I know we're probably coming up on our time,
Yeah.
Caroline, PTA, PT. I would also just add that, especially right now during this COVID crisis of being completely, really unsocial in a lot of ways, outside of the house, doing some of the things that we normally would do, kids not being able to do some of the things that they normally would do. It's really a time that we have to be very vigilant on their stress levels and making sure that they don't turn to this addiction because of that. So we have to make sure we're finding other ways that they can, release their stress, talk about things, and really kind of turn back from the shaming of it, but as Caroline said, the education of it, so that we can be helpful to our kids and to the students. Caroline?
Yes, thank you, Portia and Caroline and Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, for a great presentation and learning lab. And thank you all of our attendees for participating in today's learning lab. We want to make sure that our learning labs provide the information you need. So this session has been recorded and will be available on our website at pta.org/learninglabs. We will also be following up with a brief email and survey. So if you could please complete that. It's just for our purposes, so that we can make sure that in the future we're providing the content that you need and you're looking for in your lives during this time. So thanks again. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you so much.